a difficult day, you said, why are you still looking for happiness in samsara? And okay, 1 minute. So why you are still looking for happiness in samsara? And I understood samsara is dukkha, the suffering fundamentally inherent to life. It is normal that I am sick because it is the nature of samsara. There is nothing to worry about. If it is okay, it is okay. If it is not fine, it is also fine. In page 170. My question, so is it a matter of taking things as they come without any resistance, or even trying to change the situation when it is in our disadvantage?
So, I mean, it again is the question of acceptance, right? So if we can accept things when they come, then inwardly we are relaxed because there's no resistance. But it doesn't mean that we cannot change the situation when it's possible, right? I mean, you know, if we're sitting for a long time and our legs ache and we get cramped, then obviously the sensible thing is to move, right? I mean, so while we are suffering physically, the point is that while we are suffering physically, we do not also have to suffer mentally through our resistance or our resentment. It's this resistance and resentment which creates the suffering much more than the actual physical circumstances. I mean, if we can change something and make it better, then we change it and make it better. But if we can't, then, well, so what? I mean, what this came from was that there was some problems happening, a lot of problems, and I was feeling very, oh, this is really too difficult. Then I recognized that, you know, really, it's all right if things are difficult. Why do we always resent them and think that everything should go the way I want it to go and be exactly comfortable the way I want it to be comfortable? Because this is not the nature of life. So if we can accept that when things are nice, that's nice, and when things are not so nice, that's okay too, then there's no problem. So, and we have no sense of hope and fear, you know, oh, is it going to go right? Is it not going to go right? It's only our ego which is deciding this is right or wrong.
So first step is to accept, according to you, not to resist.
Yeah, not to resent it. You know, it's the resentment and the resistance which causes the suffering. If we accept things how they are, and then if they can, you know, if it's a difficult situation, if there's a solution, then that's fine. If there's no solution, then okay, so that's fine. What can we do? Right?
We have to accept, not refuse, not resist.
You know, we can accept everything. And the point is that often the difficulties in life are our greatest opportunities to learn and to grow up and to stop wanting everything to be nice and comfortable like we're a pet poodle.
Okay.
That's not what life is about. It's not just about being comfortable and having everything go the way the ego thinks it should go. We don't learn anything from that. Isn't it?
Okay. You say about your master, Jetsunna, the only thing I could really do to pay the debt of gratitude I owed to my master was to practice relentlessly. In page 164. My question, is practice the only action of gratitude? What about those who worship their master?
Okay, so basically the best way to worship is to offer to the fruits of one's practice and one's understanding. In Buddhism, the teacher is there to guide and instruct so that the student may walk the path with confidence. Milarepa, the great yogi, he did not just sit and worship Marpa, right, by sitting at his feet like a devoted dog. You know, I mean, he took the instruction that Marpa gave, and then he went and he meditated alone for many years in a cave. He might have called out with devotion from afar to his guru, but he never actually met Marpa again in person. Mm-hmm. What he gave to the guru was the devotion of his practice, and that was what Marpa wanted. Mm-hmm. So always in Buddhism, it's not enough just to have bhakti. You also have to put the instruction of the guru into your own practice and become the guru, equal with the guru through your own practice.
Do you
then
think
the guru feels that you have repaid his kindness.
Bhakti in itself for the guru had no rule, no effect?
Well, it's okay, but I know many bhakti wallahs who are awful people because it hasn't really, their genuine bhakti hasn't gone down into their heart. It's just, it hasn't transformed them. If it transforms us completely, but the best way to transform is by following the guru's instructions. Often people, the guru gives instructions, but they don't hear that. They just feel very nice, blissing out, sitting at their feet. But that's not enough. Mm-hmm. Because the ego can get very bloated on just sitting there feeling devoted if they are not using it to really transform.
You think
this is why there's in ashrams, and especially when the guru dies, then there's all this, you know, interfighting. Where has their devotion gone?
Bhakti had some place in Buddhism, you think?
Well, in Vajrayana, yes, of course, we should have devotion to the guru, but our genuine devotion to the guru is shown not just in making offerings and in our devotion, but in actually embodying the teachings which the guru has taught. Any guru wants to see his disciples transform. Mm-hmm. I mean, otherwise, what's the point? Just sitting there and it's not actually changing something very deep in the essence of your mind and teaching you to have a genuine experience of the nature of the mind, then what's the point? Mm-hmm. I mean, people can get very high on devotion, you know. We have to be careful. Mm. It can be like a big high, like taking LSD or something. And then they want that fix, they want that high. Mm. But that's not wisdom.
In the same field, Jetsumna, you say that the notion of the teacher as a spiritual friend, Kalyana Mitra, which the Buddha himself indicated is more adapted to the modern world and to the present West than the Vajrayana Tantric Guru. Also, Arnaud Desjardins, a French master, goes in this direction and has published a book called The Spiritual Friend. Can you elaborate more on this field?
Okay, so in the Vajrayana, in the Tantric path, the guru is seen as supreme and unquestioned master, right? As in Hinduism. And so therefore the student is supposed to develop what is called pure perception so that we never see any faults. And we regard the master as like a Buddha, right? So then the student must surrender all their judgment, no judging, just seeing perfection. So if, and it's a big if the guru is actually worthy of such adulation, then this can be indeed a skillful means for invoking their blessings, because we are completely open and invoking their blessings. But the problem arises not just in Buddhism, but in Hindu yogic circles everywhere. The problem arises when the guru is not so perfect and merely uses his position to exploit the students. So the power and the control is all in the hands of the guru, right? The student is not allowed to even question what's going on. So we've seen many instances nowadays of abuse of this power in Buddhist, Hindu, yogic circles. So it's obvious that it's very dangerous. If the guru is really what he's supposed to be, then that's wonderful. How do we know? How can we tell? This is the problem. In the Mahayana texts of Buddhism, the example is given of the Kalyana Mitra. The Kalyana Mitra means the good spiritual friend who guides and instructs, but is not considered as omniscient and all-powerful. The teacher is deeply respected for his knowledge, but he's not obeyed blindly. So therefore, we can have many Kalyana Mitras along the way, many, many teachers. And somehow in this modern age, for most people, not everybody, but most people, this seems a more sensible relationship because it avoids the dangers of this total submission where we might be submitting to someone who is not worthy of that submission and will abuse it. So this is nowadays, of course, a very, very controversial subject. And a number of books are being written on the whole guru principle and the dangers as well as the great benefits of this total devotion and submission to a guru. It all depends on the guru, much more than on the students. But how do you know? Because you don't see the guru, you only see him there. You don't have that personal interconnection. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So this is why, in many ways, at this point, and certainly until one has total certainty to treat the teacher as like a Kalyana Mitra rather than a guru, is probably more sensible.
Jetsumna, you define humor as the seventh parameters. Could you give more details so that the listener and readers of this teaching, once writing, are well motivated to practice it from moment to moment?
Well, I mean, I say that a sense of humor is the seventh paramita because of the seventh spiritual quality needed on the path. Because one problem for newcomers on the spiritual path is that we tend to take ourselves too seriously, right? It all becomes very intense and we become very critical, both of ourselves and of others. So therefore it's important to lighten up, you know, and to be able to have a sense of humor about ourselves and about the whole situation. Don't take it too seriously. That doesn't mean that we're not sincere, but that we shouldn't be too serious about the whole thing. So we should keep a sense of proportion because otherwise the ego takes over, and the ego is a very stern taskmaster. And it all becomes too intense and just too heavy, too serious. So lighten up, laugh. Lamas love to laugh. I think this is one good sign of a good guru, is that they love to laugh. and that they they're not rigid.
The problem that to laugh, we should be happy, and to be happy, it is not always the case.
Well, you know, more you laugh, the more happy you will be. The light, it helps to release a lot of this inner critic. You know, people are not happy because they're so critical, and the ego is so much in control. Well, if you laugh, then where does the ego have to hide?
You think it is maybe it is a good advisement, especially for Lebanon in this terrible situation and horrible situation. People, they are not laughing, they are always critiquing, they are always sad about such a situation.
I mean, when people go to see, for example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you know, from all over the world, people like from Lebanon, etc., they come and they tell him all their troubles, all their worries, they all have a good cry. And His Holiness also has a good cry because he really empathizes with their suffering and he really feels it. And so they all sit there crying away. And then His Holiness starts telling them some story or making some kind of humorous observation. And next thing you know, that everybody's laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And they come out all smiling. I mean, his secretaries always say they all go in tears and they all come out with big smiles because it's like he takes all their suffering in on himself.
Mm.
But he doesn't keep it there like a big heavy rock. He is through his compassion, he takes on their suffering. But through his wisdom, he's able to release it. And that release comes through, you know, laughter, which just comes from his belly as he just it and releases it for them. So laughter can be a great release also.
Okay.
And it's important because otherwise you end up just burdened down and not able to even see clearly anymore. It doesn't help. It doesn't help to be in that state of mind.
And how to be happy and to laugh when we are with a people who they are sad and they are always in bad situations.
This is what His Holiness does. He takes all their suffering and his sadness and he transforms it for them. Well, he's His Holiness, so that's very nice. But that is what a great bodhisattva will do.
Mm-hmm.
A bodhisattva will empathize totally and take the suffering and feel the suffering, but he won't stick with the suffering.
Mm.
I mean, he's not like weeping. All the Buddhas and bodhisattvas are smiling. If you look at Buddhist art, they're all smiling. They're at peace. They know the suffering of the world. My goodness, no one knows it better. But because of their wisdom, they're able to transform that into something very profound and very deep, and ultimately something good. That's why they smile.
Jetsunna, many people are enthusiastic about a spiritual teacher. Often they don't know him or her well because they just say so in big meetings or on the internet. And then they are disappointed because the negative, even corrupted elements of this or that teacher come out. Rinpoche told us in one of his teaching that this is a big problem. How to deal with this disappointment and turn it into an opportunity for spiritual progress.
Well, I mean, we mentioned this just above, the problem of the less than ideal teachers that's come to the fore in this age, especially of media exposures. You know, previously these things went on, but people didn't talk about them. So, of course, firstly, it is very difficult to know what teachers are really like behind the scenes, you know, away from the limelight, away from all the guru devotion. So we have to be careful. We have to be cautious. Don't believe everything the publicity is telling us, right? And so, of course, we can also learn from imperfect teachers, but we do not need to accept everything about them. You know, if one has followed a teacher, for example, and then later, subsequently, we learn about their shadow side, then it's good nonetheless to remember with gratitude all that one has learned and gained from that teacher. After all, if they did not give good teachings, we would not have stayed with them. So, you know, despite everything else, at least they gave good teachings and helped us, you know. So we don't have to, as we say, throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? We don't have to just completely disregard everything, because they gave good teachings, they good help. So that was good. So then we can appreciate what we gained, but also be more careful, more cautious next time, and not too trusting until one is totally confident of that teacher's integrity. Mm-hmm. But as I say, the important thing is not to just discard everything or get disillusioned with all the teachings. It's, you know, we take what has been useful and we're grateful, and the rest we can leave aside. What else can we do?
But in fact, there is a lot of fake gurus, fake teachers. How to distinguish?
How can you? If we knew it was a fake, they wouldn't have any students. I mean, some of the teachers with the biggest students are the ones who are the most suspect. But because they have charisma, therefore they attract. I mean, even Hitler had many millions of great devotees who followed every word he said. And they were highly educated, intelligent people, but, you know, he had that certain quality, that certain charisma, and a message which people wanted to accept. And so they did. So, you know, we have to be very, very careful. In the tantric texts, it says that we should take up to 12 years.
12 years.
Before we accept a teacher. Up to, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to spend 12 years, but, you know, it means you have to be careful. Look at it from all sides. Don't just believe everything you're told. My Lama said that you have to look for 20 years and then see what the students are like. Not even just 2 years, but 20 years. After 20 years, look at their students. How are they? Then you can see, is this a good guru?
Is there some other criteria to distinguish the good?
Really? Not really, because, you know, I mean, if it was so obvious, then people wouldn't be fooled. Obviously, the majority, I would say, of teachers or gurus are bona fide. Most of them don't make any great claims about themselves. And they say, oh, I'm just like you. I'm still practicing the path, but I know a bit more, so I can teach you what I know. I would definitely say that anyone who claimed to be enlightened can go out the nearest door, because I never heard any genuine teacher who said they were enlightened. But they will, you know, you can see, look at their students, look at the feeling around them. How does it feel? And then if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But in general, most teachers are bona fide. I mean, it's not that we have to suspect everyone. But if you do hear something about someone, then listen and investigate. Don't ignore it, because it could be true.
We should listen even if it is something negative about this teacher.
Definitely. If it is, then investigate. It might just be somebody's neuroses, or it might be true. Mm-hmm. And if you hear it again and again, then I would definitely have, you know, alarm system going off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jetsunna, some spiritual teachers say that if you can't find the time to meditate, you have to create it. This formula is undoubtedly true on an absolute level, but on a relative level, doesn't it risk making many people feel guilty who are struggling to have a slightly better daily life from an ethical point of view, and have such responsibility that it is really complicated for them to create this time?
Well, of course, I mean, we all know that the modern world is a very busy and complicated place. It's not like it used to be where people had endless time. But nowadays, I mean, many lamas also are, like Mingyur Rinpoche and Brother Songye Rinpoche, etc., are encouraging people to do short but frequent sessions rather than long sessions. They're saying you don't need to sit for an hour or two every day, even 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But, you know, throughout the day when you have a little time, it is just as good. 10 minutes of shamatha or practicing awareness meditation, or even just a few minutes of bringing yourself back to the breath, bringing yourself back to the mind. Repeat it throughout the day for 2 to 5 minute sessions, trying to maintain awareness throughout the day, etc. This will transform the mind just the same. I mean, and at the same time, it doesn't prevent us from carrying out our tasks. You know, it introduces a clarity into our mind and a sense of presence in our mind. That doesn't take time. That just needs us to remember to bring ourselves back into the moment. The problem is that mostly our minds wander. They wander in the past, they wander in the future. They, you know, just keep making up stories for us, or they're very critical or whatever. So to bring the mind back into the present moment through mindfulness and awareness, this doesn't take time. It just requires that we remember to do it, right? To bring attention to focus on what's happening right now. So instead of just wandering around, we bring the mind into the task which we are doing at this particular moment. So that also makes our day much more efficient and much less stressful. We get stressed out by the mind being out of control. If we can bring our mind back into the present moment and pay attention to what we're doing in this moment, then we feel inwardly much more relaxed and at ease. And this is also very, very important practice. So nowadays, many teachers are recognizing that people do not have vast amounts of time in which to do a formal practice every day, and that it's not necessary. But because the question is learning how to be aware, how to be present, and at the same time, to bring an open heart, you know, to have loving awareness, not just awareness, but with an open, kind heart. That's more than enough.
But 10 minutes, what it can do or what it can change to transfer mind? Only 10 minutes.
If we do many 10 minutes, many 5 minutes even, it can transform the mind. Better than doing an hour or two, and then the rest of the day, our minds are wandering all over the place. Do you understand?
Yes, yes.
And the question is training our mind how to be present, how to be aware, how to have that open, spacious clarity. You don't need to spend a long time doing it, but to do it again and again. You're sitting at your computer and then just take a few breaths, a few minutes, just to be present. What is the mind doing in this moment? How is the mind? Not just running around with the mind, but bringing the attention back into the moment. If one does that as much as one remembers throughout the day, that trains the mind how to be conscious, how to be present. When we have time, we can do longer, but there's no excuse, because it's not the amount of time, but the amount of ability we have to transform our everyday life into our practice.
Jetsumna, you say many people avoid thinking about death and are very afraid of it. But when one is not afraid of death in life, one is relieved of an immense burden. In page 29 in your book. My question, when and how not to be afraid of death?
Well, I think, first of all, the one thing we have to remember is that one thing certain about life is death. You know,
I think
ça va revenir.
Jetsumna is disconnected, so we'll wait her to be again with us.